It's my best material.
Okay, witty comments may begin.
I have a question for Jameson.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I hate Merrick. It's Merrick. I hate Jews. It must be Aaron.
It was I don't trust Jews though, but
I
still
have
just
no
as
response.
offensive. That was funny, man.
That's fine.
Yeah, I don't know. Are you guys gonna do like a doo-wop chorus? I feel like with you all sharing the same microphone, we need
That's-
some sick vocal harmony.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah. Did I muted?
No, we're just checking.
Okay.
Just wait for the mic. I was just making sure you can hear him.
Are you preparing for your sweet doo-wop vocal harmony?
I wouldn't mind starting a JSJabber a cappella group.
The tongue, teeth, and the lips.
What do they call that? Barbershop quartet.
Barbershop is a quartet, and you're not quite there.
With you are. With you, we are. There's
Well,
four
yeah,
of us.
but I'm not on the same mic.
That
There's
doesn't
just
matter.
something about all four of you, like leaning together and just
It's true, especially
letting
'cause it's like a
those sweet
real-
sounds loose.
Yeah. So I don't feel worthy to be the guest, so I'll try my best.
That's crazy,
That's all I'm
dude.
telling you guys.
I'm excited.
And I'm just saying. I know who normally
Sweet.
on.
Well, we have some awesome guests, but we also had some really crappy guests before. Like me, for example.
That part doesn't make it in the intro. What if Mandy just sabotages you?
The problem with that is you actually think that we have had some very specifically less effective guests, and that's got to get cut out of the broadcast too.
Mum's the word.
Mum's the word. Good thing this isn't going out live right now.
Oh yeah, it is, huh?
Yeah, this is totally going out live right
Jew
now.
stuff included.
Yeah, let's keep the anti-Semitical remarks.
So you're gonna have
to
to market. You're gonna have to private this thing fast.
Soon as-
Quick, NSA, help.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So Jameson, I feel like you're the best show host.
Okay,
So whenever you want to get more official and
let
do
me look at what
the
episode
number and
this.
all that stuff.
Let me look at what episode we're on. This is 67, right?
We already
that
did
sounds right.
67.
We did
Really?
66 last week.
66 was transitioning to JavaScript.
Oh, that was the worst episode.
Oh, so
Really?
We've
No,
had
I'm
we've
just
had a
kidding.
guest since then.
Joe loved that.
Yeah,
one.
last week we had
Yes, that was last week.
Oh, yeah, that was 67 was last week. Was
We can always record a
Oh,
soundbite if we get the episode number wrong. We can
It's 68. All right, I'm
Do
ready.
it.
I'm going to do it. All right. Hey, everybody, and welcome to JavaScript Jabber, episode 68. I am your guest host, Jameson Dance. Chuck is at Lone Star RubyConf this week. We have Merrick Christensen,
What's up?
we have Joe Eames,
Hey there.
and we have an incredibly special guest, Aaron Frost,
hello.
What?
and he is not British.
Coming from across the pond.
Once you're gone, I'm gonna start using that as my greeting.
Well, I wish my name was like that one guy, the launch, Reginald Braithwaite. Like your name's even British, not
Yeah.
just your accent. No,
Oh, I would have my name be Benedict Cumberbatch.
that's pretty.
That's a
British
very
too,
British
yeah.
name. Yeah.
Wellington something.
Then you would be the Archduke of JavaScript.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be an awesome title.
It's a good title.
So,
But-
Jameson, you want to talk about why we have Aaron on the show?
Yeah, I was going to ask him to introduce himself.
Oh, great.
So I'm a web developer at an awesome company called Domo.
But what's your official title?
Officially, I don't know. What are you playing at? Maybe an open web strategist.
There you go.
A social media expert?
Yeah, I don't know. But I work on our UI team, and we're getting ready to push out a really awesome release that everyone's gonna love. I'm also an author. I published a short book with O'Reilly in May, and working on another book. They're both about the next version of JavaScript, ECMAScript 6. So,
That
yeah.
is what we are here to talk about today, right? We're going to talk about ES6 and why we should be super excited. Do you want to just go over the terminology? Maybe some people don't know what ECMAScript even means or what 6 is. 6 is
Yeah.
a number.
Not just that, like Harmony, all the code names, JS Next.
Yeah.
TC39. Oh man,
Yeah.
buzzwords.
Yeah. Someone should be writing these down because we can talk about all of them. So start off. How is JavaScript and ECMAScript related? So when Brendan first built JavaScript, is effectively it was called LiveScript, and by the time it was done with beta, Sun had gotten involved and they renamed it to JavaScript, right? And they tried for a really long time to make progress, and they did make some progress, and they eventually had some falling outs. And there's some videos online where you can watch Brendan and Ike talk about it. Douglas Crockford, and one of them compares it to the Fellowship of the Rings, where they just kind of fell apart, and the other one compares it to the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and so they just kind of fell apart, and they needed some help. So what happened in the past was they got this international standards body called ECMA to adopt kind of the API of what was then JavaScript, and that API became like the official script API of ECMA. So ECMAScript is like this API and this language API, and then there's different implementations of it. So like implementations some of us have heard of is like JavaScript is one, VBScript would be one. Some companies have implemented their own flavor of something like JScript, which is like JavaScript, but it's ActionScript, yep. So these, and you guys probably know more, but these are all implementations of the ECMAScript API. So JavaScript is an implementation of ECMAScript. So when the ECMAScript version gets updated, when they update that API, all the implementations now going to go update and try and work together. So Microsoft's implementation tries to get to play well with Firefox's and Chrome. So yeah.
Got it.
So ECMAScript is the canonical one, and the thing everyone calls JavaScript is really just the implementation of this standard, right?
Yeah.
Sweet.
So it kind of sounds like the adoption by a standards body, that was almost, I don't know if it was at the time that they realized how wise it was, but I assume that the adoption of JavaScript across the browsers had a lot to do with the fact that it was a real standard rather than just one body saying, hey, we've got this thing.
Yeah, so I listened to a talk by Brendan, and it sounds like at first ECMA didn't get too involved. And so even though it was officially adopted as their script language, it wasn't, like they didn't seem to participate a lot. And he said later on, finally they got a solid group of people together that they could finally talk and start making agreements. And when that happened, he said ECMA even started coming to the meetings, which he thought was significant. And so I think it took them a while to get like really involved, but yeah, the more that the need to have browsers do the distributed computing arise, ECMA got more involved.
So do you know who is ECMA?
I don't know who ECMA is.
Are there shadowy conspiracy theories about ECMA? Are they part of the triumvirate that runs the world's governments or something?
Boys just smoking cigars and running the whole web operation.
They started in the Temple of Solomon, right?
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
No, but so the ECMAScript, or the ECMA committee, they've commissioned a group of people, and they form these committees, and they call them technical committees. And the technical committee number 39, which is what we hear is called the TC39, those are the group of people that are significant that go to the monthly and quarterly meetings to talk about the progress in the language. So the TC39 is a committee put together by ECMA.
Sweet.
It's pay to play, right? Joining TC39, you gotta pay.
I have no idea.
Got it.
Let's talk about JavaScript. Like,
all right.
What's up with ES6?
Okay, so you guys asked a question though. What's the difference between like ES6 and JS.next and
Oh yeah,
Harmony? What are those things?
Yeah.
when I started reading about it, I just called everything harmony because that's what I thought it was. But harmony's one thing is a bigger thing than just ES6.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and ES.next is different than ES6 too. So when the committee's working on the next API, the next spec, that's what they call whatever the next one is called ES.next or JSNext.
Oh.
So
that happens to be ES6 right now.
Right now that's ES6. Right? So when JavaScript 6 is out, ActiveScript Next is still a thing, but it's a pointer to the ES7.
So in the past they've referred to other versions as ES. They've always referred to it, or is this something they just started?
I don't know if ES Next was what they called 5. It might be a new thing because back before 5 there was like a lot of disaccord.
Right.
But now they agree on a lot more things and they're able to make more progress. So
I always thought it was just like marketing terms. ES Next, like Microsoft came up with the name or something.
I don't think so.
So what is harmony then?
So back when they finally decided, back when they started to disagree, there was a really big release that everyone wanted to agree on it, and that was kind of where the falling out happened. And they stagnated for years. And some people took it.
This was ES4, right?
Yeah, this is on the ES4
so
ES4, or ES3.
Right? They tried to do it and it just never came out because they could never agree.
Exactly. So some people tried to make like a sub-release of that and call it ES3.1 or ES3.2, I can't remember. And no one could agree on which way they were going to go. After years, they finally would release the smaller subset. And there's, in August of, I'm going to say year, I want to say 2011, maybe it was 2009. I forgot it right here, but I sent out an email and said, hey, we've started to make a bunch of progress. We've deemed next release we're going to call ECMAScript 5. And then all other features, forever, whenever we come up with a feature we want to put into the language, we're going to dump it into this big overall bucket called Harmony. And they revved the version of ECMAScript 3.1. They revved it up to 5 because they're like, hey, we don't want it to be just a .1 release, because we've made a lot of progress in our committee here and we've come a long way. So we're going to rev the version up to 5 because just to show that we made some progress, and then everything else got dumped into Harmony. And so as they release new versions, they're picking the prospects for the new language, for the new versions, all come out of the big Harmony bucket.
Mm.
So the scope for ES6 is almost entirely finalized as far as what will be in. They've already started putting new features into the ECMAScript 7 bucket.
Cool.
So yeah.
So do you want to talk about some of the things that are in ES6?
Yeah.
What can we expect from the next version of JavaScript? Or ECMAScript, I guess.
Yeah.
You guys cut out for a little bit.
Can you hear us now?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So there's a lot of things. And a lot of these things come from other languages. We can talk about it in a second, but so they got things like arrow functions. Some people call those lambdas.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a new type of lexical scoping with things like let instead of var and const. You can have constant variables, and then they also.
You dropped out again after const.
Oh, I think it's when we type. I think we drop out.
Yeah. Yeah, it mutes your mic.
It's a Google Hangouts.
It's a Hangouts thing.
It detects the sounds of the mic and it typing and it determines your mic. All right, let's keep going. I'll see if I can fix that.
Okay, so they've got one of my favorite features is destructuring. I also like when you couple that with default values. And I think that we're going to save a lot of code. You couple those with
destructuring like CoffeeScript, where you can just pluck properties out of an object.
Yeah, so you can pluck them out on the left of the assignment expression, right? Instead of on the right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can actually destructure straight in your function signature, which is kind of nice. So they've got, it's called spreading, where you can spread out an array just by prefacing it with a ... And you could even do, like, let's say you call a function that returns an array, you could do ... function call and that would spread out the array from the returns for the function call. So yeah, and that's kind of a weird looking syntax, ... method call.
Right.
This looks like a weird object name,
Yeah,
right?
it does.
Anyway, they got proper tail calls, which is, I think, significant for performance reasons. They've got sets and maps, official sets and maps, and they even implemented something called weak maps to help prevent memory leaks. They've got equivalent detection to test equality. It's called egal, which is French for equal.
Really?
So, like checking object equality?
Yeah, so like instead of saying equals, you can say is or is not.
Okay.
There's a new syntax on it for is and is not.
Huh,
I don't know why they added that, but they got in there. They have new things for generators, like generators and iterators, which will help us write our own type of for loops. They have direct proxies. They have a thing called quasis, which is a lot.
Say that again about quasis.
So they have it's like string interpolation, and they allow you to do kind of templates. They have binary data. They have some API improvements.
So are they still doing binary data, or are they pulling that out?
Did you read that they're pulling it out?
I don't know. It seemed like there's some speculation about that.
I haven't heard anything about them pulling it out.
Well, maybe they are.
I heard it was in, but it might be out. Yeah.
So you want to, I guess, divulge, from the top. Why are fat arrows useful? I mean, obviously they're in JavaScript. They do the binding of this, but what I mean.
So kind of starting from that first feature, the arrow functions. So in JavaScript, we all know that finding out what this is really fun, right?
Yeah.
Because this
my favorite thing.
This can change, and sometimes what you think this isn't this, right? This is really something else. Like if you pass a callback.
Talk about.
What's that? It's hard to talk about on air, but it's easier when you have like a whiteboard. But if you passed like a callback in and it had a reference to this, well, when you pass it into another object, this mention is going to be pointing to that object.
Sure.
So anyway, it's easy to mess up this, especially in those kind of callback situations with traditional functions. But with arrow functions, you kind of get it forces the scope so that with the time when the function is created, whatever this was at that time, it's bound to this. So
it's like creating it and then using the bind function.
It's like using bind, yeah, exactly, or saying var me equals this and then saying
closing
me
over this.
Yeah, so it's kind of a replacement for binding everything or aliasing this to something else. So.
Sure.
So yeah, so that's kind of the benefits of arrow functions. I think they have some weird syntax though that people will complain about, but I think it'll be okay.
People will probably complain about anything they do. It's someone's gonna hate any of it. So you just listed kind of a grab bag of stuff there. You sounded like a used car salesman. Like you got your carburetor and your camshaft, and like there's all this stuff in it. Are there any more important parts you think are going to be huge deals to general developers?
Yeah, we could just kind of go through one at a time if you guys want to. And we can just talk about.
Sure, maybe just talk about the things you think are the coolest.
Yeah, so I'm really excited. Like at the top of our functions, a lot of time we.
You cut out there for a second.
So someone passes.
I lost you.
Aaron.
Hello? Hello?
And then we got to go.
Are you guys there? Hello?
So.
Hello?
Can you hear us again?
Hold on.
Yeah, I couldn't hear any of the past.
Our network. We just had a little network glitch.
A little wobbly.
What point did he cut out?
I just right when he started.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
This has been a big fail for Google Hangouts, guys.
Yeah. So talking about
Wait, you back?
Oh, you're back.
Yeah, we're back. All right.
All right.
So at the top of each of our, someone's editing this, right? Yeah.
Yes, it's a little.
Well, let's hope that's the same broadcast.
Yeah.
It's got a new broadcast.
Well,
Jameson stayed on, so I
even
think
if it's
we're
multiple audio files, it'll still be fine. She can fix it.
So at the top of our functions, we spend a lot of our time doing something that I call data proofing our functions. We spend the first few lines like destructuring the. So if they give us an array, we pull out index 1 and 2, and we do something with that. Or if they give us an object, we pull out its ID and store that off, and then we got to make sure that's not undefined. Otherwise, the internals of the function are going to break. So we spend a lot of our time doing something that I call data proofing our functions, and a lot of the syntax, the sugar that they give us inside this new release, I think help us with that. So like destructuring, they make it real easy. Instead of spending like 3 lines to pull 3 variables out of an object, you can just do it all in 1 line. Like the syntax for destructuring, so let's say you had an object with an ID and a name and an address. Instead of saying var name equals object.name, var address equals object.address, and var ID equals object.id, you could just say var, and then you do a brackets, and you say ID comma name comma address, close your brackets, and say equals the object. And then
what happens if it does find, and what if it is undefined?
So the destructuring, that's a great question. So the destructuring has, they have a refutable pattern, which you can argue with. So the pattern I just told you, like var.
Sure, the standard destructuring, like you see in CoffeeScript.
So that's irrefutable. So if you say, if you do braces name comma ID comma address, those 3 things better be there. You're going to get an error.
You get an exception.
I don't know if it's what kind of an exception is, a reference or if it's something undefined. I don't know what it's going to be, but you're going to get an error of some sorts, right? But if you preference, like let's say you're not sure if the address is going to be there, you use a question mark address, and when it's trying to destructure that object and find its address, if that's undefined, it'll be more forgiving, like kind of like what we're used to with JavaScript. It'll say, okay, I'm going to give you an undefined for that value. I'm not going to throw an error.
So in that case, could you do paths in your destructuring?
Paths? So like nested?
Yes.
Yeah, you can nested destructuring. You can give it a refutable reference to downside and inside of those paths as well too. And you could even alias it. Like let's say they've got like some weird key value name, right? Like you could say name equals whatever the weird key was. Like if the key was cool. Like _h, you could say name equals _h, and it will destructure the _h into the name variable.
Got it.
So you can even do like alias, things like that. But so they're called destructuring patterns, and in your patterns you have to make sure that you're using that refutable syntax if you think that there might ever be undefineds coming through.
Got it.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Otherwise you're gonna get errors. So that'll be some of the fun we get to play around with. In some of the browsers we've already implemented this. Like Firefox has already begun to implement this. So if you pull up their, what's that word? That web.
Dev channel?
Yeah, like some.
Yeah, it's like a web preview thing.
Yeah, they've got this. I can't remember the name of it right now, but
like
anyway,
scratchpad.
It's like a scratchpad type thing. You can write it in there and execute it in Firefox. So you can already start to dork around with these things. But,
it's essentially a DSL that tells you how to map object values into, or potentially keys into.
Exactly. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I think it will save us a lot of time instead of pulling them out on multiple lines or comma separating our destructuring
or having to use something like _defaults or _.
So to get rid of lots of the boilerplate, it sounds like.
Joe, stop it.
Just stop using it, dude.
So yeah, so that's destructuring, and then there's also things like default values. So like let's say I'm going to pass you in an object. But let's say it comes in as undefined. Then I can like up in my method signature I can say, like let's say the object name I call it in object because it's this object that's coming in. Well, I can say in object equals an empty object, or in object equals some method call that will return me a default object.
Right.
Or I can say in object equals new object just to get a new object. So you can do default parameter syntax up in your method signature, and you could even like put those 2 things together to destructure an incoming object and give it default values all up in the method.
So essentially default arguments, rather than having to say, hey, it's equal to this or this value, you just do that all in the arguments.
Exactly. And then they also have something called rest parameters. So if you have like a variable number of parameters coming in and you're not sure how many it's going to be, like in other language they call these like var args or
variables.
Yeah. So you can just say like dot 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 array or dot 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 my array, and you'll have this array called my array that's full of all the remaining objects.
So it is an array instance, or is it a subset of an array instance?
No, it is. It's not a pseudo array like the arguments guy, right? Because we hate that guy.
Sure.
So.
Four arguments array.
Yeah. So the weird thing is that like inside that rest parameters, those two things that's gonna be different than the arguments. And another thing with like the default parameters, if you assign a default value, that's not gonna show up in the arguments object itself. So if you're trying to use default parameters and like that gets assigned, so let's say you pass in a number and you give it a default of 0 in case they don't pass it in. It will that 0 won't show up in the arguments object. So if you're still trying to use arguments will still be empty, even though you have a value for that default value got assigned. So there are a lot of like subtle weirdnesses that you're gonna have to get used to when you start using these new syntactic sugar pieces. But yes, those are some of the things I think will clean up a lot of our code and allow us to write a lot less boilerplate and get into shorter functions.
I wonder how many like millions of lines of JavaScript have been written just to do all that stuff. That's kind of cool to think that it'll
Yeah.
I know.
happen for you.
Yeah, a lot of the libraries people just like because they can do this dot options.
Yeah.
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 So.
Yeah, I think it will be cool. I think that kind of stuff will be nice. But yeah, so kind of going on to another feature that I think will be huge for people is the new let. Right? Are you guys familiar with let?
That's the one that's scoped according to the block you're in, right?
Yeah.
Var, but
Is it block scoped?
that's my understanding. Block scope.
Well, let's find out.
Yeah, it is block scoping. So currently we have function scoping, right?
Right.
Which everyone loves, or
Yes.
closure scoping, whatever we want to call it.
Yeah, I like it.
I know what it is, so I don't mind it. But some people aren't even aware about the variable hoisting that happens.
Right.
Like you say, hey dude, that variable you declared on the last line of your function, that it actually got hoisted to the top at runtime. And they're like, huh?
Yeah.
Or in each of your for loops, your var I equals 0, that var I got hoisted to the top of that function. It's not just like specific to the for loop.
Sure.
It got hoisted all the way to the top. So a lot of people don't even understand what variable hoisting is, yet this new let syntax is going to come in and make their life so much better.
Yeah.
So do you see in the future people only using let var going away?
Dude. I mean, if Internet Explorer can go away, then yes. But if you have to support something that's not ever going to upgrade to let, then no. People will still use var for a long time.
Yeah.
However, there are libraries, like something like tracer compile, where you can write it in the new JavaScript.
I think we'll save that for the end of the show.
Okay, that's
about
cool.
how to use this kind of stuff today.
Hopefully, people will implement let,
Right.
because I think it's for performance gains. I think it's a huge win. I think that's the big win. Like inside of an if statement, you put your C hat on. Like you're like, okay, back to my Java days or my C days. If I do a new variable inside of this if closure, it's not going to hoist out.
Right.
And that's what some people come into JavaScript thinking is happening, and it's not. It's getting hoisted to the top of that.
It's getting allocated either way.
And so after the if statement, that variable is still around. If you give it a definition inside your if, it's still there with that definition. Like it's not releasing the reference to that. And using let, if you were to do an if statement inside of there, you do let a equal 0. As soon as that if closure is done, that if block, then A is gone. Like it's not equal to 0. It's gone. They released it back to the garbage collection, which is pretty cool. I think that's huge. And another kind of a tool that they gave us with that is they gave us things like let expressions and let statements, and those act almost exactly like an if statement. You can say let, and then you have parentheses. You can say x equals this, y equals that,
Oh, cool.
z equals this,
Kind of instead of using the comma operator that we'd use today.
And then you give it a block, like an if statement, an opening and a closing brace. And you could do some code in there, and after that let expression is done, those get cleaned up. And another option on that is they got block scopes where you can just drop down some curly braces just wherever you are. You just have a short-term block for just because you want to.
Are they going to allow you to reference blocks and pass them around?
I don't know.
I mean, in Ruby, obviously, you can do that, but it seems like in JavaScript, I don't know how you would infer that it's not an object literal in the parse time. I guess if there's not key values.
So blocks in Ruby are more like anonymous functions in JavaScript than the way we've been using the word block, right? Like.
Yeah, but I'm wondering if they're actually going to add block scoping if you are going to be able to reference a block and pass it around almost like a pseudo include.
Yeah, and close over variables in it. If you can pass it around and it's got to support closures.
I'm not sure.
Well, it would work more like an include than a closure. So in Ruby, you have
You guys cut out for a little bit.
Drop all the width.
You could find a variable outside of the block, throw a block in and reference the variable, and then you can take that block and do something.
Yeah, it would have to close over that.
Closing over it.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how those will work.
Maybe we'll just keep using closures. I mean, closures are great for that. But
yeah. Anyway, so that's kind of one thing that people need to understand is you're not going to go through your code and like replace all var with let, otherwise you'll break the internet, right?
Right.
Because even though you don't understand variable hoisting, your code works right now as it is because variable hoisting exists. And if you start just replacing everything and all of a sudden a bunch of variables that were being hoisted aren't and your code breaks, I mean, you just need to like aggressively do it, but like watch it. You can't just like blindly start replacing let with var.
Does let still get hoisted to the top of its scope?
So, and that's an awesome question. I was wondering that, and I thought the answer was yes, but Dominic DeNicola, is it? How does he say it?
I think it's DeNicola.
Yeah. So Dominic, he corrected me on Twitter. I was like, because I had that same question. I was like, is the let expression inside of an if, is that going to get hoisted to the top of the if? So they have this thing called the temporal dead zone.
Oh man, that sounds like some sci-fi magic.
I know, dude. That's what I said. I was like, what
it's the most awesome
are you talking about?
It's the most awesome thing ever.
Yeah, it's just kind of a hack to, like, I think under the covers it's getting hoisted. But they've created this hack called the temporal dead zone where magically it won't be there. But as far as you're concerned as a developer, it doesn't get hoisted, or at least won't appear to have been hoisted to the top of its block. But I'm pretty sure it's getting hoisted to the top of its block, under the covers. But they have this thing called the temporal dead zone.
Or if you try and access it before.
If you try and access it before, you'll get an error.
You'll get an error. Yeah. Whereas otherwise you would get undefined.
Yeah. So
interesting.
They have so go and read it. If you go out there and check out the internet's about temporal dead zone in JavaScript, you'll see some guys. I was talking to Axel about it out at FluentConf, and we were having a couple chuckles about it. But I'm happy it's there because now your code will run like it looks like it's going to run, which I think is an important thing to have the execution look like what it is in your editor. Whereas right now, the execution doesn't look anything like what you wrote.
I really want to run out and register temporaldeadzone.com.
Pretty sure it's dead. Pretty sure. .org.
So let's talk a little bit about generators, because I know people are able to start using them in Node today.
Yeah, so generators already exist, and actually, generators have been in Firefox for a really long time.
Oh, really?
And I wasn't aware of that. Like, I didn't know that. A lot of these things we've been talking about, like let, that's already in Firefox, and these things have been out there for years. Firefox has helped the TC39 by implementing these things and then giving them feedback about this is how people are using these things. So, yeah, what have you heard about generators? Or what are you excited about?
You know, I've heard of people combining generators with promises to write more synchronous looking JavaScript, even though it's async. Also just the performance aspect of it, right?
Yeah. I think just being able to pause that kind of an execution, I think people will use generators for exactly what you said. I I don't know that most JavaScript users will use generators. I feel like a lot of library builders will definitely use generators. But I'm wondering if everyday users are going to use these things and understand what yield is and when not to yield and when they should stop yielding or if they should stop yielding.
Not sure.
I don't know. I wonder.
Can we talk a little bit about the module system? It's kind of a huge area, but
Yeah, I don't
probably my
think that they
biggest question
finalized.
mark.
I don't think they finalized the module system.
I think it's stabilizing, but
Is it?
yeah.
It's still up. I haven't. That's one chapter I haven't got to in this book is to the modules because it isn't stable. And I've already worked on a couple of chapters where they weren't stable and had to rewrite the whole thing. So unfortunately, I don't know as much about the modules as I should. I do know that they took a careful look at AMD and the kind of the common JS modules and looked at those two approaches, and they ended up with a completely different one, a third one, which some people are excited about and some people weren't excited about. Some of the Googlers were like, "What is this?" And some of some of the other people in the community were like, "Hey, this is great. At first I didn't think I'd like this, but I really do like it." I don't know, but you can already use
hate it more
those.
than being punched in the face, though.
What's that?
Said some people hate it more than being punched in the face because it's different from anything that's out there already.
Yeah, which is frustrating. I don't know. I need to dive into those more.
So,
Okay.
one of the features I think is really cool is template strings. Can you talk a little bit about those?
I don't even know if that spec is all the way finalized, but we all, inside of our code, we've always dealt with template strings, right? And some of us do we don't have multiple line strings, and with these quasis we get multiple line strings, which I think will be nice. And I think that when you're working with pluralizing or localizing your strings, I think these quasi strings can totally help by allowing you to just and it uses a syntax we're all pretty familiar with. The double curly braces to wrap around your variable names. It uses those when it sprinkles your stuff into those strings. So
yeah. I had the chance to go to Gotham JS, and Dominic actually spoke there about ES Next, and he mentioned something really cool about template strings, that the template string that you implement, the function you implement for it, can actually return something other.
You cut out.
Using,
Eric. Hello? Sounds like we're having another wobble.
You have like an exec actually execute a system.
Yep.
So
You guys totally cut out. I haven't heard anything for the past minute.
Oh,
You're
Jameson,
back.
yeah.
we're back,
I
man.
All
hear
right, we
you.
should probably wrap this up based on our network issues. So where did you lose us before we had
You
this?
were just starting to talk about different uses for the template strings.
Oh my gosh.
Really?
Yeah, it's
Did you
been a
get
while.
Merrick's? Did you get
No,
Merrick's piece?
nope. It was cutting in and
Oh.
out, but it was only a couple seconds what he said.
Okay, so all I was saying is that I went to Gotham and I had the chance to watch Dominic talk about template strings and how you can actually return something other than a string. One of the examples he used was in Node.js to create to shell out and call a system command. You could simply use a template string and return back a child process. So we can use template strings to implement these little DSLs throughout our app.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I think there's huge uses. One thing that when I was reading about it, I at first I didn't understand. It's almost like it's a function. You create this little quasi generator thing, and then you end up invoking it like a function with some text afterwards.
Yep.
And it spits you back, as Merrick said, either a string, which is how a lot of people will use it, but you could also make it return not a string.
Yep.
Return another thing besides that. And so I think it will be interesting how people will decide to use
Yeah, it'll be weird.
the quasi generator stuff. So it'll be exciting though. It'll be really cool.
Sweet.
People have done crazy things with all the different things that people have ever implemented in the language, and with the ability to monkey patch JavaScript on the fly. It's gonna be interesting to see what people do with
with more features.
these generators, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see with the quasis. We'll see.
So
Go ahead, Joe.
I was just gonna say one of the things I really wanted to hear from Aaron is Aaron's made some fairly controversial statements about IE, and I think that this would be great to put onto the show because I think there's a lot of information that he's spit out that I didn't really thought through before, thinking, oh, Microsoft's been talking about IE is now an evergreen browser, so.
Yeah, so I can talk about that if you guys really want to put that on the show.
But it's your opinion, not ours.
Let's just keep our comments not to the Microsoft sucks, but up to what the trend has been.
So I just get scared ever like intentionally supporting Microsoft. Just after watching what happened with Windows XP.
Let's be specific here. IE, right?
So yeah, with IE. So Windows XP got stuck on IE8. Right. So they're never going to get better than IE8, right?
Right.
And that's an issue for a lot of us. Because when you're talking about Windows users, these are people who are tied to a specific version of a browser, and if they're IE users, I mean they're limited in how advanced they're going to get. And so, when you look at Microsoft struggling and thrashing to become an evergreen browser, I'm not sure they ever will become truly an evergreen because in an evergreen world. Windows XP never would have lost support for IE9 or IE10.
Right.
And I just worry that with Windows 7 being so big and it's coming to a point where they're going to decide to stop supporting it eventually, possibly, I'm just worried that that's going to become a non-evergreen operating system. We're going to be stuck with IE10 being the best that Windows 7 can ever get. And then, so if we're developing for IE10 now, we're in the same spot we are with IE8 right now, where everyone hates it. Right. And people are touting, IE10 or IE11 are standards compliant, but that's only today's standards. Look, IE8 was kind of compliant when it came out. If IE11 or IE10 is the last thing that Windows 7 ever gets, and we get 4 years down the road, we're all going to be cursing it. So I get nervous building anything specific to the IEs just because they are an unknown. They don't have a proven track record like every other browser out there does. Right? And so it just makes me nervous, and the amount of cost that goes into building an awesome app is great. And then once you hand that off to QA and they go test it in IE, it like doubles your effort to make that awesome app work in IE8. So it's that I think is troublesome, but
how much money has been spent?
Yes, talking to Scott Schlegel, he made some good points though. If this is your market share, like let's say you're competing with Google, and Google is abandoning IE8, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you see a niche, like someone like Yahoo, they don't get nearly as many views. But if they start supporting IE8 and doing things for IE8 that Google's not going to do anymore, maybe Yahoo gets some. They get a lot of money out of that. You never know. So it could be a place for a lot of people to get started and make some money, but larger companies, I don't know if they'll focus on it as much. But like, why would you focus? I don't know. Why would you focus building a website for the browser of yesterday when you could spend that same amount of money building the website of tomorrow, like with really cool features, and you don't have to worry about, these weird, oh, it's IE9 in some strange compatibility mode for IE7. Like, who put it in that mode? Who knows, right? But I don't know. Sure. I think it merits. I mean, if someone said that they wanted to do it and they had a good business reason, I think it would make sense. But if you have limited capital, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know if it makes sense.
So let's bring it back to talking about ES6. What can you do to use it today? You mentioned the tracer compiler, and then I think Firefox has lots of them, and Node has a flag to enable Harmony. What other stuff can you do to use it today?
So on Node, you can use whatever is implemented in V8 or anything that's monkey patchable, right? So if they can put it in there, you can use it. If it's shimmable, right, you can get it in. But if not, if you're talking for the front end and you're roped to like an IE8 environment, tracer compiler is the best one I've seen. But I mean, it's still fairly limited. But it allows you. It's a library that allows you to write, ES6 code, and then you have a compile stage where it will transpile it into something that even IE8 could speak. So if, like, let's say you use the word let, like you say let a equals 0. Well, if you throw that at IE8, you're dead, right? It's gonna die. So how do you compile let into something that IE could speak? How do you get the same functionality out of let? How do you get the same functionality of var that you were expecting in let?
Right.
It's kind of tough, right?
Yeah.
Well, they figured out some really clever things, like there's only one place in the whole of IE8 JavaScript where you can get short-term scoping like what you're expecting with let. And that's if you do a try and you throw an error in that catch, the E, your error that's in your catch signature, that is a short-term block thing. That doesn't get hoisted. So they'll compile your let into a try, they'll throw an error, get into the catch, and then they use that error variable as like the let variable. So they've done some really clever things to try and mimic what let's going to do for IE8.
And just out of curiosity, like in other languages, the ones that I'm familiar with, throwing an error is an extremely expensive operation.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm sure it's slower.
I'm sure it's not fast, but you're trying to do what you can, and there's no other way to mimic that.
Right.
So, I thought it was pretty clever. I mean, is it more expensive than doing like a never-ending line of closure? No, like who knows? I haven't really tested.
In C# it definitely is. It's really expensive.
It's a big deal.
Big deal. Big deal.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Huh.
That's
really interesting. Very clever, though.
It is clever, and when you go through and look at what they're doing, like you write the code and then you have it transpile and look at it. Some of it's kind of sick. Like these people are twisted in the head that they've thought it up. But I mean, it's kind of nice to have someone do this and talking to them. They're like, yeah, we go to the TC39 meetings and then we head back and try and implement some of the changes.
Sounds like it was all written by Merrick clones.
Seriously, I look at them and I'm like, these guys are like Merrick. So they're great, and I love that they're building it. I can't help them out though because it's advanced stuff. So,
it's insane.
Yeah, it is insane.
So I had one more kind of philosophical question about ES6 as well. It seems like there are two different approaches you could take with designing a new version of a language, and one is the pave the cow paths approach, where you look at things that people are doing and you make them easier. It seems like they've done that with the argument destructuring and the default arguments and things like that. Just, hey, people are writing lots of code to do this, let's make it easier. The other path is more prescriptive, where you say, this is the direction that I want the language to go, even though people aren't doing things like that already. Do you feel like ES6 is leaning more towards one side or the other? Are they trying to change, like enforce changes in how people write JavaScript, or are they trying to make it easier for people to do things they're already doing? Or is it a kind of a mix of the two?
So, like with Let, they're obviously trying to force people to do better things, right? But they also have like a big mantra, which is they're going to adopt de facto standards from the community. And that's where arrow functions came from, right? A lot of other language have that syntax. And so people understand what it is. CoffeeScript's got fat and skinny arrow functions.
The structuring too.
Right? And destructuring, right? And the var args and anyway, they've got a lot of things, and they've said we'll adopt de facto standards in place of pioneering new stuff where we can. And so I really think that when I look at ES6, I look at, wow, there's a lot of stuff other languages already have, and they just kind of picked what they like the most and what they were able to standardize into JavaScript without breaking the internet, right? So I mean, it's all really exciting for me, I think. But yeah, I don't know if I answered that question right, but
No, that makes sense. Just kind of a mix of both.
yeah,
Well, should we wrap this up?
yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Do you have any last thoughts on ES6?
In 3 words, what's your very favorite feature in ES6?
That's one word.
Destructuring default parameters.
Cool.
Sweet. Thanks so much.
Modules? I don't know.
Oh, cool.
For sure.
Modules, probably. I should say that modules
Yeah.
number one.
Yeah, there's a ton of stuff for ES6. Like, we barely scratched the surface of it here. There's like class semantics.
Can I say my least favorite?
Yeah, of course.
You just said it. Class semantics.
Yeah, I
So
mean, there's a ton coming.
Tons.
you should plug your book, Aaron. I was going to ask, where can people go to learn more about this stuff? One of
Okay.
them is your book, right?
Yeah, so the short one we published in May, it's a free read on O'Reilly's site. It's called JS.Next, a Manager's Guide. And it's a book that you would hand to your manager if you're a developer and say, hey, look at this, this is some good explanation of the new language, a good explanation about the efficiencies of us moving towards it and abandoning older standards. And it gives you a lot of good arguments and community examples of people moving towards it and I talk about how I think that's going to make them successful. The other one, it should be out in short release, in a pre-release version, hopefully by like the end of September. But it's called ES6 Developer's Guide, and it's a field guide for ECMAScript 6. Talks about all the different features and gives you code examples and explains it.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited. It'll be fun. One thing that I should say about ECMAScript 6, the spec doesn't officially, they don't finalize it until December of this year. And they're going to give it 12 months to be officially approved as like the official ECMAScript 6. So it's not going to be official until December of 2014. However, it'll be finalized in this year's December, and they kind of go into a hardening phase where only bug fixes will go in after that. So yeah. So it won't be official until in a year and a half from now, and there's a reason they have to do it in June's or December's. So they couldn't get it into this June that just passed, so they got to wait till December. But yeah, so the book will be out way before it's done though, and you can start learning it and using it right now if you want to. So
cool.
Awesome. Let's dive into the picks then, since it sounds like you guys have to take off. Joe, do you want to start?
Sure. I'm going to make 2 picks. I went last night and saw Pacific Rim, and I really liked it. I didn't love it, but I really liked it. I saw it in 3D IMAX, and I thought it was kind of worth Guillermo del Toro is such a visual director. It was really cool in 3D IMAX. So I'm going to pick that, and I'm also going to pick, I think I've done this a couple times, but that conference, just because they have a bacon bar coming up in August. Actually, in just a couple weeks, it'll be like a week away from when this gets published or something, 2 weeks away from when this gets published. But bacon bar, gotta love it. That's me.
Awesome. Merrick, do you want to go next?
Sure. So first is a band called Phox, Phox. They have a video series on Audio Tree, and I don't know. It's really interesting music. They've got a lot of instruments going on at once. They do it in a really interesting way. The second is I recently had the opportunity to go speak at Gotham JS, and I got to meet just some awesome people down there. A lot of them were listeners, and they had a lot of kind words to say about the show. So really, I want to pick our listeners. I'm grateful we have people on the other end of these bits. So that's it.
You're the sweetest, Merrick. I'll go next. So I have a bunch because I've missed a few shows. My first pick is a thing for remote teams called Squiggle. So you connect to the site and it turns on your webcam and it takes a picture of you periodically every few seconds. And it does that for everyone. It gives you a little dashboard of your whole remote team. So you can kind of feel like you're there with them, but then the cool thing is when you actually want to talk to them, you just click on their portrait and it turns into a video conferencing thing. So it just seems like a really cool way to try and recreate the feel of having a team in the same place. Because you see all your team on your screen, even though you're not talking to them directly, but then when you want to, it makes it really easy. My other pick is NodeConf. Oh my goodness, NodeConf. NodeConf was the best conference I've ever been to by far. It was amazing. I had a similar experience to Merrick where there were lots of people I met that listened to the show, and that was cool. It felt really surreal. But it was just incredible. I met lots of great people. There's a blog post by Isaacs kind of summarizing his experiences with NodeConf, and I think he does a good job of describing why it was so fun. So that's my pick, NodeConf and Isaac's blog post about it. And the last one is it's an album by a guy named John Hopkins. It's called Immunity, and it's kind of ambient electronic music. It's wonderful. It's really great to listen to while just coding, and it's probably my favorite album of the year so far. So those are my picks. Aaron, do you want to go last?
Yeah, I'll pick movie. If there's a movie theme, I'm gonna pick Tombstone. Watch this
I
week.
love that movie. Dude, with Wyatt Earp and
The old Western one?
80s.
Sorry, yeah, the Val Kilmer one.
I think it was 90s.
Tell 'em I'm coming.
Yeah.
Hell's coming with me.
Yeah.
Dude, so good.
I'll pick Tombstone. I'm gonna pick Justin Timberlake's latest album for my music. It's a good coding vibe on it. And then I'm gonna pick Polymer JS.
Nice.
They did a screencast this week about all the stuff they're doing with web components, and it's pretty sick. I'm pretty excited for Polymer JS. So yeah.
That's sweet.
My picks.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, Aaron.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I had to make you share a room with Merrick and Joe.
Hey,
Together
I
with
want to
them.
put one last thing out there. If you happen to be going to that conference, please come and find me and say hi.
Awesome. All right. Well, we will catch you guys next week. Thanks for coming.
Thanks.
So we should stop the podcast there, but you guys should post your.
Yeah, this will get automatically posted to my YouTube channel, and then I'll do the audio extract and send it over to.
You're
What's your
not
bucket?
like a course author, or else you have a lot of YouTube followers.
Do you wanna post your picks in the chat too, so we can get those? That helps the person that puts them up on the website.
Pics, yeah, but she won't be able to see this, so I'm actually gonna extract this from here and send them to her, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, just so they're all in one place that someone can copy paste it.
Yeah, I'll take them out of this chat and send them to her.
Okay.
Okay, man.
All right. I've got to run. People have invaded my house, so
Okay.
thanks. See you guys.